The morning mist clung to the Carpathian ridgeline like a shroud, and through it, Staff Sergeant Elena Martinez watched 3 armies converge on the valley below. Her finger rested beside the trigger of her custom M40A6, chambered with a single .338 Lapua Magnum round, the last one in her possession. 3,000 yards separated her from a target that intelligence claimed could end the deadliest conflict of the 21st century. But Elena wasn't thinking about making history. She was thinking about the doubt in General Harrison's eyes when he'd assigned her to this impossible mission, and the whispered conversations that followed her through the forward operating base like shadows. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The war had been raging for 18 months across Eastern Europe, a brutal proxy conflict that had drawn in NATO forces and threatened to ignite World War III. The Kozlov Alliance, a militant confederation backed by hostile foreign powers, had proven surprisingly resilient against conventional military tactics. Their leadership remained elusive, their supply lines seemingly untouchable, and their propaganda machine painted every Allied victory as temporary at best. What started as a regional dispute had evolved into a grinding war of attrition that consumed resources, lives, and political will with equal hunger. Elena had arrived at Forward Operating Base Resolute 6 weeks earlier, transferred from the 3rd Infantry Division's sniper school, where she'd served as an instructor. Her personnel file was unremarkable. Solid performance scores, commendable marksmanship ratings, and a tendency toward quiet professionalism that neither impressed nor concerned her superiors. She was, by all accounts, exactly the kind of competent but unremarkable soldier the military produced by the thousands. Her request for deployment to an active combat zone had been approved more out of bureaucratic efficiency than recognition of exceptional talent. The base commander, General Patricia Harrison, was a career officer who'd earned her stars through political acumen as much as tactical brilliance. She ran FOB Resolute with the kind of methodical precision that kept casualty reports low and mission success rates acceptable. When Elena reported for duty, Harrison had glanced at her file for perhaps 30 seconds before assigning her to reconnaissance duties with Bravo Company's Overwatch element. It was important work, but hardly the kind of assignment reserved for elite operators. Elena's first few weeks in theater followed a predictable pattern. She'd establish observation posts on high ground, provide security for patrol units, and file detailed reports on enemy movement patterns. Her shots were clean when required, eliminating sentries, disrupting communications, supporting friendly units in contact, but nothing that distinguished her from dozens of other competent snipers operating in the region. She spoke little during briefings, asked few questions, and displayed none of the swagger or bravado that characterized some of the more experienced operators. Captain Robert Chen, the intelligence officer responsible for coordinating sniper operations, began to notice Elena during her 3rd week in the country. Not because of anything dramatic, but because of her consistency. While other snipers occasionally missed shots, misjudged distances, or struggled with challenging environmental conditions, Elena simply delivered results. Her after-action reports were precise and understated, describing successful engagements in the kind of technical language that suggested thorough training rather than natural talent. The turning point came during Operation Silent Thunder, a complex multi-day mission designed to disrupt Kozlov supply convoys moving through the contested Dragomir Pass. Elena was assigned to Team 3, positioned on a secondary ridgeline with orders to provide overwatch for the primary assault element. It was a supporting role, important but not central to the mission's success. As the operation unfolded, however, the primary sniper team encountered unexpected resistance that pinned them down and threatened the entire mission. Elena watched through her scope as Kozlov forces maneuvered to flank the trapped Allied unit. The distance to the enemy positions was significant, nearly 2,000 meters, and the wind conditions were challenging. Without waiting for authorization, she began engaging targets with methodical precision. Her first shot eliminated a machine gun team that had been suppressing friendly forces. Her second disabled a mortar crew preparing to shell Allied positions. Over the course of 20 minutes, she fired 8 rounds and neutralized 11 enemy combatants, effectively breaking the ambush and allowing the primary assault to succeed. The mission commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Whitman, mentioned Elena's performance in his debrief, describing her contribution as solid supporting fire that helped maintain operational momentum. General Harrison noted the commendation in Elena's file, but didn't consider it particularly remarkable. Good snipers were expected to provide effective supporting fire. That was, after all, why they were deployed to combat zones in the first place. What neither Whitman nor Harrison understood was the difficulty of the shots Elena had made. The environmental conditions, the distance, the pressure of a deteriorating tactical situation, any one of these factors would have challenged an experienced sniper. Combined, they represented the kind of engagement that separated competent marksmen from true masters of the craft. Elena had made it look routine because, to her, it was. The intelligence breakthrough came 2 weeks later, when intercepted communications revealed that the Kozlov Alliance was planning a major offensive operation designed to break the current stalemate. Codenamed Iron Storm, the operation would concentrate nearly 30,000 enemy troops in a coordinated assault on 3 key Allied strongholds. If successful, it would establish Kozlov control over the entire eastern sector and potentially force a negotiated settlement favorable to their cause. Captain Chen worked around the clock to develop detailed intelligence on Iron Storm's leadership structure, timeline, and objectives. What emerged was a picture of an incredibly sophisticated military operation directed by a small group of senior Kozlov commanders who had previously remained hidden behind layers of operational security. The key figure was General Viktor Petrov, a former Spetsnaz officer whose tactical brilliance had been responsible for many of the Alliance's most effective operations. According to intercepted communications, Petrov would personally oversee the opening phase of Iron Storm from a forward command post established in the ruins of an ancient monastery overlooking the strategic town of Brasov. The location had been chosen for its elevated position, which provided excellent visibility over the planned assault routes, and its symbolic significance to local Kozlov supporters who viewed the monastery as a sacred site. The opportunity was unprecedented. Allied intelligence had never before identified Petrov's exact location with this degree of certainty, and the window of opportunity was extremely limited. Petrov would be at the monastery for perhaps 6 hours during the initial phase of Iron Storm, protected by layers of security, but potentially vulnerable to a precision strike. If eliminated, Iron Storm would likely collapse into chaos, as subordinate commanders struggled to coordinate the complex multi-axis assault without their primary architect. General Harrison convened an emergency planning session to evaluate options for targeting Petrov. The monastery's location made conventional artillery strikes impossible due to the risk of collateral damage to nearby civilian areas. Airstrikes were ruled out because of sophisticated anti-aircraft defenses that the Kozlov forces had established throughout the region. A direct ground assault would require resources that simply weren't available, given the need to defend against the impending Iron Storm offensive. That left precision sniper fire as the only viable option, but the tactical challenges were enormous. The monastery sat on a hilltop approximately 3,000 yards from the nearest feasible shooting position, itself located on contested terrain that would be difficult to access and impossible to hold for an extended period. The target would be visible for only brief periods as Petrov moved between buildings within the monastery complex, and the environmental conditions, altitude, wind, temperature variations, would make accurate shooting extremely difficult. Colonel David Thompson, Harrison's chief of staff, advocated for assigning the mission to Master Sergeant William Brooks, a Navy SEAL sniper with multiple confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 2,500 yards. Brooks had the experience, the equipment, and the proven track record for this kind of high-stakes engagement. He was, by any reasonable measure, the obvious choice for such a critical mission. But Captain Chen had been reviewing personnel files and performance records, searching for alternatives. Elena's consistent performance during routine operations had caught his attention, and her file contained one detail that most readers overlooked. Before joining the Army, she had competed as a civilian precision rifle shooter, winning several regional championships and placing third in a national long-range competition. The achievements were mentioned almost in passing, treated as interesting background information rather than indicators of exceptional talent. Chen approached Elena privately, asking casual questions about her civilian shooting experience. Her responses were characteristically understated, describing her competition participation as a hobby that helped pay for college. When pressed for details, she mentioned that her best recorded shot in competition had been at 2,847 yards, made under ideal conditions with carefully hand-loaded ammunition and plenty of time for environmental calculations. The conversation troubled Chen because it suggested that Elena had been significantly underutilized during her deployment. If her civilian achievements were genuine, she possessed capabilities that far exceeded her current assignment to routine reconnaissance duties. But her military performance, while solid, had never demanded or demonstrated the kind of extreme-range precision that the Petrov mission would require. Chen decided to conduct an informal evaluation, arranging for Elena to participate in an advanced marksmanship exercise ostensibly designed to test new rifle systems and ammunition loads. The exercise took place at a remote range where distances could be extended beyond normal training parameters. Other snipers participated, including Master Sergeant Brooks, creating a competitive atmosphere that would reveal true capabilities under pressure. The results were quietly extraordinary. While Brooks and the other experienced snipers performed admirably at standard ranges, Elena's accuracy remained consistent, even as distances extended beyond 2,500 yards. Her shot placement was not just adequate but remarkably precise, grouping within acceptable parameters even under challenging wind conditions that caused other shooters to struggle with consistency. More impressive than her accuracy was her approach to each shot. While other snipers relied heavily on sophisticated ballistic computers and environmental monitoring equipment, Elena seemed to integrate multiple variables through intuition and experience. She would study wind patterns, assess atmospheric conditions, and calculate firing solutions with minimal external assistance, delivering results that matched or exceeded those achieved through more technology-dependent methods. Chen compiled his observations into a detailed report that he submitted directly to General Harrison, bypassing normal chain-of-command protocols. The report outlined Elena's demonstrated capabilities, her relevant civilian experience, and her potential suitability for high-stakes precision missions. He recommended that she be considered for specialized assignments requiring extreme-range marksmanship under challenging conditions. Harrison read the report with growing interest, but also with considerable skepticism. Elena's military record, while competent, contained no indicators of exceptional talent. Her performance evaluations were consistently positive, but unremarkable. Her peers and superiors viewed her as a reliable but unspectacular soldier who executed assigned missions without drama or distinction. The idea that she possessed world-class sniper capabilities hidden beneath this facade of military mediocrity seemed almost absurd. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The general decided to conduct her own evaluation, inviting Elena to a private meeting under the pretext of discussing her career development goals. The conversation began with routine questions about Elena's satisfaction with her current assignment and her plans for professional advancement. Harrison probed gently, searching for signs of ambition, frustration, or exceptional capability that might have been overlooked by previous evaluators. Elena's responses were polite and professional, but revealed little about her true capabilities. She expressed satisfaction with her current role, appreciation for the opportunity to serve in a combat zone, and modest goals for continued service as a sniper. When Harrison asked about her civilian shooting experience, Elena downplayed her achievements, describing them as ancient history that had little relevance to military service. The interview might have ended there, with Harrison concluding that Chen had overestimated Elena's potential, but a chance remark changed everything. Harrison mentioned the challenges facing Allied forces in the current conflict, noting that conventional tactics seemed insufficient against an enemy that had proven surprisingly adaptable and resilient. Elena's response was brief but revealing, "Sometimes the impossible shot is the only one worth taking." The comment hung in the air between them, carrying implications that neither woman immediately acknowledged. Harrison found herself studying Elena with new interest, recognizing something in her quiet confidence that suggested depths of experience and capability that had been carefully hidden. Elena, for her part, seemed to realize that she had revealed more than intended, and the remainder of the conversation proceeded with heightened awareness on both sides. That evening, Harrison reviewed Elena's complete military record, searching for clues that might explain Chen's assessment and her own growing intuition that this unremarkable staff sergeant might be exactly what the Petrov mission required. The file contained the usual collection of training certificates, performance evaluations, and routine commendations, But buried within the administrative paperwork was a single document that changed everything. It was a medical report from Elena's initial military processing, documenting a minor injury she had sustained during a civilian shooting competition. The injury itself was insignificant, but the report contained a detailed description of the circumstances. Elena had been competing in a precision rifle match when equipment failure caused her rifle scope to malfunction. Rather than withdraw from the competition, she had continued shooting using only iron sights, ultimately placing second in a field of experienced competitors at ranges extending to 1,200 yards. The medical officer who filed the report had been impressed enough to include detailed notes about Elena's performance, describing it as an exceptional demonstration of marksmanship fundamentals and mental discipline. The officer noted that Elena had maintained shot groupings that were competitive with scope-equipped rifles, suggesting a level of natural ability and training that exceeded typical civilian standards. Harrison closed the file and stared out her window at the mountains where, in less than 72 hours, Iron Storm would begin its devastating assault on Allied positions. Conventional wisdom suggested that Master Sergeant Brooks should receive the Petrov mission, and under normal circumstances that decision would be automatic. But these were not normal circumstances, and the mission's importance transcended routine personnel decisions. The general made her choice, knowing that she was betting the success of a war-changing operation on intuition, incomplete information, and a staff sergeant whose greatest talent seemed to be hiding her true capabilities. When she summoned Elena for the mission briefing, Harrison was still uncertain whether she was making a brilliant tactical decision or a catastrophic error in judgment. Elena entered the briefing room with the same quiet professionalism that had characterized all her interactions with senior officers. She listened carefully as Harrison outlined the intelligence on Petrov's location, the tactical significance of eliminating him, and the extreme difficulty of making a successful shot at 3,000 yards under combat conditions. When Harrison finished her presentation, Elena asked only one question: "When do we move out?" The simplicity of her response, the complete absence of doubt or hesitation, told Harrison everything she needed to know. This was not a soldier who questioned her capabilities or worried about the consequences of failure. This was someone who had been waiting for exactly this kind of impossible mission, and who possessed the confidence that came from knowing she could succeed where others would fail. As Elena left the briefing room to begin her mission preparations, neither she nor Harrison fully understood how this single assignment would transform not just the course of the war, but both of their lives in ways that would echo for decades to come. The shot that Elena would attempt in 48 hours would indeed change everything, but not in the ways that either woman expected. The armory at FOB Resolute hummed with the kind of quiet intensity that preceded major operations. Elena moved between the weapon racks with deliberate precision, her hands testing the weight and balance of different rifle systems while Captain Chen observed from across the room. The mission required more than standard equipment. At 3,000 yards, even minor imperfections in rifle mechanics or ammunition consistency could mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Elena's fingers traced the contours of a Macmillan TAC-50, a proven long-range system favored by military snipers worldwide. The rifle's reputation was impeccable, its accuracy well documented, but something about its balance felt wrong in her hands. She set it aside and continued her evaluation, testing each weapon system against criteria that she kept entirely to herself. Chen watched this process with growing fascination, recognizing that Elena was applying standards that went far beyond military specifications. "The Accuracy International AX-50, Chen suggested, gesturing toward a sleek rifle mounted in a specialized case. "It's been getting excellent reviews from our long-range teams." Elena lifted the weapon, shouldered it, and worked the bolt action with fluid motions that spoke to years of experience. The rifle felt solid, well-engineered, but she shook her head after a moment's consideration. "Too heavy for the infiltration route," she said simply. "And the barrel harmonics won't be consistent at extreme temperature variations." Chen frowned, confused by the technical reference. Barrel harmonics was an advanced concept that most military snipers never encountered, dealing with the microscopic vibrations that occurred when a bullet traveled down a rifle barrel. The fact that Elena was considering such subtle mechanical factors suggested a depth of knowledge that her personnel file had never indicated. Elena continued her evaluation, eventually settling on a custom-built rifle that had been assembled by the base's weapons technician for experimental purposes. The system combined a Remington 700 action with a specially selected barrel, housed in a chassis system that could be configured for multiple shooting positions. It wasn't the most expensive or technologically advanced rifle in the armory, but Elena's hands seemed to recognize something in its construction that satisfied her exacting requirements. "This one," she said, beginning to disassemble the weapon for detailed inspection. "But I'll need to hand-select the ammunition and make some adjustments to the trigger mechanism." Chen authorized access to the ammunition stores, where Elena began the painstaking process of examining individual cartridges under magnification. She was looking for microscopic variations in case dimensions, bullet seating depth, and powder consistency that could affect accuracy at extreme ranges. Most snipers relied on factory-match ammunition that met military specifications, but Elena's standards were clearly more demanding. She rejected dozens of cartridges before finding 20 rounds that met her criteria, then further refined her selection down to 5 perfect specimens. Each cartridge was weighed, measured, and marked with identifying numbers that corresponded to detailed notes in a small notebook she carried. The process took nearly 4 hours, but Elena worked with the patient focus of someone who understood that preparation was more important than natural talent. While Elena prepared her equipment, intelligence reports continued to arrive from surveillance assets monitoring Kozlov Alliance movements. The enemy's Iron Storm operation was proceeding exactly as predicted, with large formations moving into assault positions under cover of darkness. Radio intercepts confirmed that General Petrov had arrived in the operational area and would take personal command of the offensive from his forward headquarters at the monastery. Lieutenant Colonel Whitman briefed the supporting elements that would facilitate Elena's mission, emphasizing the narrow window of opportunity and the extreme difficulty of the shot she would attempt. The infiltration route required a 12-mile approach march through contested terrain, followed by a rapid ascent to the designated firing position. Elena would have perhaps 30 minutes to locate her target, calculate firing solutions, and execute the shot before enemy patrols made her position untenable. The weather forecast added another layer of complexity. A high-pressure system was moving through the region, bringing clear skies, but also unpredictable wind patterns that could shift dramatically with altitude changes. Temperature differentials between the valley floor and the mountain ridges would create thermal currents that could deflect bullets by several feet at long range. Elena would need to account for all these variables with minimal time for observation and adjustment. Sergeant First Class Marcus Williams had been selected as Elena's spotter for the mission. Williams was an experienced reconnaissance specialist with multiple combat deployments, skilled in navigation, communications, and target identification. His role would be crucial during the approach march and the final engagement, providing security, environmental data, and confirmation of target identification. Williams had initially been skeptical about working with Elena, whom he knew only by reputation as a competent but unremarkable sniper. When Captain Chen briefed him on the mission's requirements, Williams had privately questioned whether Elena possessed the experience necessary for such a high-stakes operation. His doubts were reinforced when he observed Elena's quiet demeanor during their initial planning sessions. "Have you ever made a shot past 2,000? Williams asked during their first private conversation, probing to understand Elena's capabilities. "Once or twice," Elena replied, her tone neutral and unrevealing. Williams interpreted this response as typical military understatement, assuming that Elena had limited experience at extreme ranges, but was reluctant to admit her limitations. He decided to approach the mission with the understanding that he might need to provide more guidance than usual, particularly regarding environmental calculations and target engagement protocols. Their partnership began with a series of training exercises designed to refine communication procedures and shooting positions. Williams was responsible for range estimation, wind measurement, and target acquisition, while Elena focused on rifle preparation and shooting fundamentals. The exercises took place at progressively longer ranges, building toward the distances they would encounter during the actual mission. At 800 yards, Elena's performance was solid but unremarkable, consistent with her previous military record. Williams began to relax, feeling confident in his ability to guide the engagement effectively. At 1,200 yards, Elena's accuracy remained good, though she required several minutes between shots to calculate environmental factors. Williams made detailed notes about her shooting process, planning to streamline their procedures for the time-critical conditions they would face. The breakthrough came when they extended the range to 1,800 yards, approaching the outer limits of the practice facility. Williams expected Elena's performance to deteriorate significantly, requiring multiple shots to achieve acceptable accuracy. Instead, something remarkable happened. Elena seemed to transform as the distance increased, her shooting becoming more fluid and instinctive rather than less controlled. She fired 3 consecutive shots that landed within a 6-inch group, an achievement that would have been impressive under any circumstances but was extraordinary given the challenging environmental conditions. Williams checked his range-finding equipment twice, unable to believe the distances involved. When he confirmed the measurements, he found himself studying Elena with new respect and growing curiosity. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Williams asked, echoing the question that would later be posed under very different circumstances. Elena's response was characteristically understated. "My father taught me to hunt when I was young." You learn to make the first shot count when you're tracking games in the mountains. The explanation was plausible but incomplete, leaving Williams with the sense that Elena was revealing only part of the truth about her background. He decided not to press for additional details, recognizing that some soldiers preferred to keep their personal histories private. What mattered was that Elena clearly possessed capabilities that exceeded her official record, and Williams began to adjust his expectations for the upcoming mission accordingly. Their final training exercise took place at the maximum range available at FOB Resolute, 2,400 yards across a valley that provided realistic environmental conditions. Williams set up his spotting equipment with careful attention to detail, knowing that this would be their last opportunity to refine procedures before the actual mission. Elena prepared her rifle with the same methodical precision she had displayed throughout their training, but Williams noticed subtle changes in her demeanor as the stakes increased. The transformation was difficult to quantify, but impossible to ignore. Elena's movements became more economical, her focus more intense, and her overall presence more commanding. Williams had observed similar changes in elite operators when they transitioned from training to combat, but he had never seen such a dramatic shift in someone with Elena's unremarkable reputation. Elena fired a single shot across the valley, the bullet's impact clearly visible through Williams's spotting scope. The hit was precise, landing within inches of the designated target despite wind conditions that had been challenging other shooters throughout the day. More impressive than the accuracy was Elena's confidence. She had not requested wind readings, environmental data, or target confirmation. She had simply observed, calculated, and executed with the kind of assured precision that spoke to years of experience at extreme ranges. "How did you know the wind conditions?" Williams asked, genuinely puzzled by Elena's ability to account for variables that required sophisticated measurement equipment. Elena pointed to subtle indicators that Williams had not noticed: the movement of grass on distant hillsides, the behavior of birds in flight, the patterns of dust and debris carried by air currents. She had been reading the environment through observation and experience, integrating multiple data sources into shooting solutions that matched or exceeded those produced by electronic systems. Williams realized that his initial assessment of Elena had been completely wrong. She was not an inexperienced sniper who needed guidance and support. She was an expert who had been concealing her true capabilities, perhaps from modesty, or perhaps from a preference for operating without external expectations. The discovery changed his entire approach to their partnership, shifting from mentor to supporting player in what was clearly Elena's area of exceptional expertise. The mission launch was scheduled for 03:00 hours, allowing Elena and Williams to reach their firing position during the pre-dawn darkness that would provide concealment from enemy observation. Their route had been planned to avoid known patrol patterns and observation posts, but the approach would still require careful navigation through terrain that offered limited cover and numerous opportunities for detection. Elena spent her final evening at FOB Resolute in solitary preparation, cleaning her rifle, organizing equipment, and reviewing intelligence updates about their target. She worked in silence, displaying none of the nervous energy or pre-mission anxiety that characterized many soldiers before high-stakes operations. Williams, observing from across the preparation area, was struck by Elena's composure and the ritualistic precision of her equipment checks. General Harrison visited the preparation area shortly before midnight, ostensibly to review final mission details, but actually to assess Elena's mental state before launching an operation that could determine the war's outcome. She found Elena seated beside her weapon, writing in a small notebook that contained what appeared to be personal observations rather than tactical notes. "Final preparations?" Harrison asked, settling into a chair beside Elena. "Final thoughts," Elena replied, closing the notebook and focusing her attention on the general. "I was thinking about the mathematics of precision shooting. People assume it's about the rifle, or the ammunition, or the environmental conditions. But ultimately, it's about accepting that perfection is possible if you eliminate every variable you can control." Harrison studied Elena's face, searching for signs of doubt or overconfidence that might indicate psychological instability under pressure. Instead, she saw the kind of calm certainty that characterized elite performers in any field: athletes before championship competitions, surgeons before complex procedures, pilots before dangerous missions. Elena was not nervous about the shot she would attempt. She was confident that she could succeed. "The stakes are considerable," Harrison said, probing gently for Elena's understanding of the mission's broader implications. "They always are," Elena replied. "That's what makes the shot worth taking." The conversation ended there, with both women understanding that Elena was ready for the mission that would unfold in the hours ahead. Harrison left the preparation area convinced that she had made the right choice in selecting Elena for this critical assignment, while Elena returned to her equipment checks with the focused concentration of someone preparing to demonstrate capabilities that few people would ever understand or appreciate. As midnight approached, Elena and Williams began their final equipment checks, loading their packs with the specialized gear required for their infiltration and escape. The rifle was disassembled and distributed between them, along with the carefully selected ammunition that Elena had prepared. Navigation equipment, communications gear, survival supplies, and emergency medical kits completed their loadout, creating packs that would challenge their endurance during the difficult approach march. The base fell quiet around them as operational security protocols restricted movement and communications. Elena and Williams existed in a bubble of focused preparation, isolated from the broader military activities that continued around FOB Resolute. Their mission had become the center of their universe, demanding complete attention and commitment to details that could determine success or failure. At 0245 hours, Elena shouldered her pack and checked her weapon one final time. Williams completed his communications check and confirmed their navigation waypoints. Both soldiers were ready for an operation that would test every aspect of their training, experience, and personal courage. In 6 hours, Elena would attempt a shot that could change the course of the war. But first, they would need to survive an approach march through some of the most dangerous terrain in the entire conflict zone. The darkness beyond FOB Resolute was absolute, a moonless night that transformed familiar terrain into an alien landscape of shadows and uncertain footing. Elena and Williams moved through the perimeter defenses with practiced stealth, their blackened faces and carefully arranged equipment making them nearly invisible even to friendly sentries who knew of their passage. Behind them, the base's lights faded into distant pinpricks, leaving them isolated in hostile territory with 12 miles of treacherous ground between them and their objective. The first phase of their approach followed a dry riverbed that carved through the valley floor, providing concealment from observation while offering relatively easy navigation. Elena set a punishing pace, her movements fluid and sure-footed, despite the rocky terrain and complete darkness. Williams struggled to match her rhythm, surprised by the endurance and trailcraft she displayed. This was not the cautious, methodical movement he had expected from a sniper trained primarily in static shooting positions. They moved in complete silence for the first 2 hours, communicating only through hand signals and predetermined movement patterns. The night air carried sounds with unusual clarity, distant artillery exchanges, the occasional drone of aircraft, and the subtle noises of nocturnal animals that had learned to coexist with human warfare. Elena seemed to catalog each sound, her head turning slightly at intervals as she processed information that remained invisible to Williams. At 0500 hours, they reached the first checkpoint, an abandoned farm complex that marked the transition from Allied-controlled territory into the contested zone, where Kozlov patrols operated with increasing frequency. Elena called a brief halt, allowing Williams to check their navigation while she studied the surrounding terrain through night vision equipment. The farm building showed signs of recent occupation, vehicle tracks, discarded equipment, and defensive positions that suggested enemy forces had used the location as a temporary base. "Patrol passed through here yesterday," Elena whispered, pointing to barely visible disturbances in the dust near the main building. 4 vehicles, heading northeast. They'll probably return tonight. Williams examined the same area, but could see nothing that indicated recent activity. Elena's ability to read terrain and identify subtle signs of human passage was clearly more developed than his own, despite his extensive reconnaissance training. He began to understand that Elena possessed fieldcraft skills that extended far beyond marksmanship, suggesting military experience that was not reflected in her official record. They bypassed the farm complex and began ascending into the foothills, where the terrain became increasingly challenging. Rocky slopes, dense vegetation, and unstable scree fields slowed their progress while demanding careful attention to noise discipline. Elena continued to set the pace, choosing routes that balanced speed with concealment in ways that demonstrated intimate familiarity with mountain warfare tactics. The ascent revealed glimpses of the broader tactical situation developing across the region. To the north, artillery flashes marked the beginning of preliminary bombardments that would precede the main Iron Storm assault. Radio traffic, monitored through Williams' communications equipment, indicated that Kozlov forces were moving into final assault positions as dawn approached. The offensive that intelligence had predicted was unfolding exactly on schedule, creating time pressure that made their mission increasingly urgent. At 0630 hours, they encountered their first direct threat, a 3-man Kozlov patrol moving along a ridgeline that intersected their planned route. Elena spotted the enemy soldiers first, signaling Williams to take cover behind a cluster of boulders while she observed their movement pattern. The patrol was conducting a routine sweep, moving with the casual alertness of soldiers in familiar territory who did not expect to encounter enemy forces. Elena studied the patrol through her scope, noting their equipment, spacing, and the route they were following. After several minutes of observation, she made a tactical decision that surprised Williams. Rather than wait for the patrol to pass or find an alternate route, she began moving to intercept them. Williams followed reluctantly, uncertain about Elena's intentions but trusting her judgment based on the competence she had displayed throughout their approach. Elena positioned herself along the patrol's route, selecting a location where the terrain would force the enemy soldiers to move in single file through a narrow defile. Williams took an overwatch position 30 meters away, providing backup support while Elena prepared for close-quarters engagement. The patrol approached their position with routine alertness, unaware that they were walking into a carefully prepared ambush. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. Elena eliminated the lead soldier with her suppressed sidearm before the man could react to her presence. The second soldier had time to recognize the threat, but not to respond effectively before Elena's next shot dropped him beside the trail. The third soldier attempted to retreat, but stumbled on the rocky terrain, giving Elena time to close the distance and neutralize him with clinical efficiency. Williams watched this encounter with growing amazement. Elena had executed a textbook small-unit ambush with the kind of precision and timing that spoke to extensive combat experience in close-quarters situations. Her movement, weapon handling, and tactical decision-making demonstrated skills that were typically associated with special operations units rather than conventional sniper training. "Where did you learn urban warfare techniques?" Williams asked as they concealed the bodies and resumed their movement. "Afghanistan," Elena replied tersely, offering no additional details about deployments that were not mentioned in her official record. Williams decided not to pursue the subject, recognizing that Elena was clearly operating under a different set of experiences and capabilities than he had been led to expect. The mission was proceeding successfully, and Elena's leadership was proving more effective than he had anticipated. His role was increasingly supportive rather than collaborative, a reality he accepted with professional grace. They reached the final ascent at 0730 hours, beginning a grueling climb up exposed rock faces that led to their designated firing position. The route required technical climbing skills and specialized equipment, challenging both soldiers as they hauled their heavy packs up vertical sections that offered minimal handholds. Elena attacked the climb with the same methodical determination she had displayed throughout their approach, but Williams could see that the physical demands were testing even her exceptional endurance. The firing position was located on a narrow ledge approximately 300 feet below the mountain's summit, chosen for its clear line of sight to the monastery while remaining concealed from casual observation. The ledge was barely wide enough for 2 people, requiring careful arrangement of equipment and precise positioning to create an effective shooting platform. Elena and Williams spent 30 minutes preparing the position, arranging their gear, and establishing fields of fire that would allow them to engage their target while maintaining options for rapid withdrawal. Elena assembled her rifle with deliberate precision, each component fitted with the kind of attention to detail that reflected years of experience with the weapon system. Williams prepared his spotting equipment and communications gear, establishing contact with FOB Resolute to confirm their successful arrival at the objective. The monastery was clearly visible in the distance, a complex of ancient stone buildings perched on a hilltop that commanded impressive views of the surrounding valleys. Through their optical equipment, they could observe significant military activity around the monastery. Kozlov forces had established defensive positions throughout the complex, with vehicle parks, communications antennas, and guard posts that indicated the presence of a major command element. Intelligence reports had been accurate. This was clearly serving as the forward headquarters for Iron Storm operations. Elena began her pre-engagement routine, studying wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, and the geometry of the shot she would need to make. The distance was exactly 3,047 yards according to Williams' laser rangefinder, placing them at the extreme edge of effective engagement range even under ideal conditions. The morning air was creating thermal currents that would complicate ballistic calculations, while humidity and temperature variations added additional variables to an already complex shooting problem. Williams provided environmental data through his specialized monitoring equipment, measuring wind speed and direction at multiple altitudes, atmospheric pressure, and temperature gradients that would affect bullet trajectory. Elena received this information, but seemed to rely more heavily on her own observations, studying the movement of smoke, dust, and vegetation to assess conditions that electronic sensors might miss. At 0845 hours, radio intercepts confirmed that General Petrov had arrived at the monastery and was conducting operational briefings with his subordinate commanders. The target was present, but identifying him among the numerous military personnel moving throughout the complex would require patience and careful observation. Elena and Williams settled into sustained surveillance, watching for the behavioral patterns and security arrangements that would identify their specific target. The weight tested their physical endurance and mental discipline. The narrow ledge offered no comfort or relief from the mountain winds that grew stronger as morning progressed. Elena remained motionless behind her rifle, adjusting her position only when necessary to maintain circulation and weapon stability. Williams rotated between spotting duties and radio communication, providing updates to command elements while monitoring for changes in the tactical situation. At 0920 hours, Elena identified their target. A group of senior officers had emerged from the monastery's main building, distinguished by their obvious authority and the deference shown by subordinate personnel. General Petrov was identifiable by his bearing, age, and the security detail that accompanied his movement. Elena tracked him through her scope as he moved between buildings, studying his patterns and predicting where he might present a clear shot. "Target acquired," Elena whispered into a radio microphone. "Stand by for engagement." Williams focused his spotting scope on the same area, confirming target identification while preparing to observe bullet impact and provide immediate feedback about shot placement. The moment they had trained for was approaching, but Elena waited with infinite patience for conditions to align perfectly. This would be her only opportunity. Missing or wounding the target would immediately compromise their position and eliminate any chance of completing the mission. Petrov moved through the monastery complex with the confidence of a commander who felt secure in his forward headquarters. He paused frequently to examine maps, consult with subordinates, and observe the tactical situation developing in the valleys below. These pauses provided potential shooting opportunities, but Elena rejected each one based on factors that remained invisible to Williams: wind conditions, target exposure time, background considerations that could affect bullet trajectory. At 0934 hours, atmospheric conditions stabilized into what Elena recognized as an optimal shooting window. Wind patterns became consistent, thermal currents settled into predictable flows, and visibility reached maximum clarity. Petrov emerged from a building and began walking across an open courtyard, moving toward a position that would provide Elena with an unobstructed shot for approximately 15 seconds. Elena controlled her breathing, settling into the shooting position she had perfected through years of practice and combat experience. Her finger moved to the trigger as she made final adjustments to her aim point, calculating the complex ballistics required to deliver a bullet across 3,000 yards of mountain air with accuracy sufficient to eliminate a human target. The crosshairs settled on Petrov's center mass as he walked across the courtyard, unaware that his life was ending with each step. Elena's world narrowed to the precise mechanics of trigger control, breath management, and weapon stability. Everything she had learned about long-range precision shooting was focused into this single moment, when success or failure would determine the outcome of an entire war. Williams held his breath as Elena's finger began the final pressure that would release the shot. 3,000 yards away, General Petrov continued his confident stride across the monastery courtyard, never suspecting that history was about to change with the sound of a single rifle shot echoing across the mountains. The silence that followed Elena's shot was profound, a moment suspended between cause and effect that seemed to stretch across eternity before reality reasserted itself with devastating clarity. Through Williams' spotting scope, General Petrov crumpled to the monastery courtyard's ancient stones, his command presence extinguished in an instant by a bullet that had traveled 3,000 yards with surgical precision. The round had found its mark exactly where Elena had aimed, delivering the kind of decisive blow that military theorists dreamed about but rarely witnessed in actual combat. For several seconds, the Kozlov personnel around Petrov remained frozen in disbelief, their minds struggling to process what had occurred. The general had been walking confidently across the courtyard one moment and lay motionless the next, with no visible indication of where the fatal shot had originated. The crack of Elena's rifle had echoed off the mountains in multiple directions, creating acoustic confusion that prevented immediate identification of the shooter's position. Williams keyed his radio with trembling fingers, transmitting the code phrase that would inform command of their success. "Thunder complete. Package delivered." His voice carried the awe of someone who had witnessed an impossible achievement, a shot that would be discussed in military circles for decades to come. Elena, meanwhile, was already beginning her post-engagement routine, ejecting the spent cartridge case and securing her rifle for immediate movement. The monastery erupted into organized chaos as Kozlov forces responded to their commander's assassination. Security teams spread throughout the complex, establishing defensive perimeters while communications personnel attempted to contact higher headquarters and coordinate emergency medical response. Vehicle engines roared to life as reaction forces prepared to sweep the surrounding terrain for the sniper team, responsible for eliminating their commanding general. Elena and Williams had perhaps 10 minutes before enemy forces reached their position. The withdrawal route they had planned during mission preparation led down the mountain's eastern face, through terrain that offered concealment but demanded technical climbing skills under extreme time pressure. Elena broke down her rifle system with practiced efficiency, distributing components between their packs while Williams gathered spotting equipment and prepared navigation aids for their descent. The initial phase of their withdrawal proceeded with desperate urgency. Elena led the way down treacherous rock faces and unstable scree slopes, moving with the kind of reckless confidence that balanced speed against safety and calculated risks. Williams followed as best he could, fighting to match her pace while avoiding falls that could cripple or kill them both. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew steadily louder as Kozlov's search teams began sweeping the mountain in expanding patterns. 20 minutes into their withdrawal, they encountered the first enemy patrol, a 4-man team equipped with tracking dogs that had picked up their scent trail. Elena spotted the patrol from a concealed position overlooking the route they had just descended, recognizing immediately that conventional evasion would be impossible. The dogs had locked onto their scent, and the terrain offered limited options for misdirection or concealment. Elena made another tactical decision that demonstrated capabilities Williams had not suspected. Rather than attempting to outrun the patrol, she prepared an improvised ambush using materials from their emergency kit. A small explosive charge, originally intended for equipment destruction, was rigged as a booby trap along the patrol's obvious route. Elena positioned herself to provide supporting fire, while Williams took an overwatch position that would allow him to cover their continued withdrawal. The ambush succeeded beyond their expectations. The explosive charge eliminated 2 patrol members instantly, while disorienting the survivors enough for Elena to engage them with precision rifle fire. The engagement lasted less than a minute, but its psychological impact on pursuing forces was significant. Radio intercepts indicated that Kozlov commanders were reassessing their pursuit tactics, recognizing that they were dealing with highly trained special operations personnel rather than conventional reconnaissance troops. This tactical success provided Elena and Williams with a crucial time advantage, allowing them to increase their lead while enemy forces reorganized their search efforts. Elena used the respite to change their withdrawal route, abandoning their original plan in favor of a more circuitous path that would take them through terrain that favored evasion over speed. Williams trusted her judgment completely now, having witnessed enough of her tactical expertise to recognize that she was operating from a knowledge base that far exceeded his own. As they moved deeper into the mountains, radio communications from FOB Resolute provided updates on the broader tactical situation that their mission had created. General Petrov's death had sent shockwaves through Kozlov command structures, creating confusion and hesitation at precisely the moment when Iron Storm required decisive leadership. Subordinate commanders were struggling to coordinate the complex multi-axis assault without their primary architect, leading to delays and tactical errors that Allied forces were already beginning to exploit. The Iron Storm offensive, which had been timed to begin with synchronized precision across multiple sectors, was fragmenting into uncoordinated local attacks that lacked the strategic coherence Petrov had designed. Individual assault units were advancing on schedule, but without centralized command authority, they were failing to achieve the synchronized pressure that would have overwhelmed Allied defenses. Elena's single shot had effectively decapitated the enemy's command structure at the most critical moment of their largest military operation. Intelligence reports indicated that Kozlov political leadership was in emergency session, attempting to designate a replacement commander for Iron Storm while dealing with the propaganda disaster of losing their most competent general to what appeared to be a precision assassination. The enemy's media apparatus, which had portrayed Petrov as an invincible tactical genius, now faced the impossible task of explaining his sudden death without admitting the vulnerability of their senior leadership. Elena and Williams continued their withdrawal through increasingly rugged terrain, moving along ridgelines and through narrow valleys that provided concealment while gradually bringing them closer to Allied-controlled territory. Elena's navigation was flawless, her route selection demonstrating intimate familiarity with mountain warfare tactics that suggested extensive training in specialized environments. Williams began to suspect that Elena's background included experience with elite units whose operations remained classified even from standard military personnel. Their second major encounter with pursuing forces occurred 6 hours into the withdrawal, when a helicopter-borne search team attempted to insert directly ahead of their projected route. Elena detected the aircraft's approach through subtle changes in ambient sound, giving them time to take cover before the enemy forces could establish blocking positions. The helicopter crew was clearly experienced in mountain operations, using terrain features to mask their approach while deploying troops in positions that would cut off obvious escape routes. Elena studied the enemy deployment through binoculars, identifying the tactical problem they faced with professional assessment. The helicopter team had positioned itself well, creating a barrier that would force Elena and Williams either to engage superior numbers or to risk exposure by attempting to circumvent their positions. Either option carried significant dangers, but Elena chose a third alternative that demonstrated her talent for unconventional tactics. Using their remaining explosive materials and improvised devices created from survival equipment, Elena constructed a diversion that would draw enemy attention away from their actual withdrawal route. The diversion consisted of carefully placed charges that would detonate in sequence, creating the impression of movement in a direction opposite to their intended path. The plan required precise timing and careful coordination, but Elena executed it with the confidence of someone who had used similar tactics successfully in previous operations. The diversion worked perfectly. The sequence of explosions convinced the helicopter team that Elena and Williams were attempting to escape through a particular valley, leading them to concentrate their search efforts in that direction, while the actual targets moved through entirely different terrain. By the time the enemy forces realized they had been misdirected, Elena and Williams had gained several hours of lead time and were approaching the relative safety of Allied patrol areas. As evening approached, they reached a predetermined extraction point where friendly forces could provide security for their final approach to FOB Resolute. Elena used emergency radio frequencies to contact the extraction team, providing authentication codes and position updates that would allow Allied forces to coordinate their safe return. The response from the extraction team carried undertones of excitement and urgency that suggested Elena's mission had achieved results beyond initial expectations. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the radio with barely contained enthusiasm. "Storm front has collapsed. Repeat, the storm front has collapsed." Enemy offensive operations suspended across all sectors. Request immediate debrief upon your return. The radio traffic confirmed what Elena and Williams had suspected during their withdrawal. Petrov's elimination had achieved strategic effects that extended far beyond the death of a single enemy commander. During their final approach to Allied lines, Elena and Williams received continuous updates about the tactical situation developing across the entire front. Without Petrov's centralized command authority, Iron Storm had devolved into a series of uncoordinated local attacks that Allied forces were defeating in detail. Kozlov units that had expected to participate in a synchronized offensive found themselves advancing alone into prepared defensive positions, where they were systematically destroyed by forces that should have been overwhelmed by the scale of the enemy assault. The strategic implications of Elena's shot were becoming clear as intelligence analysts processed the full scope of Iron Storm's collapse. The offensive represented the Kozlov Alliance's best opportunity to achieve decisive victory in the conflict, concentrating their most experienced units and best equipment in an operation designed to break Allied resistance. Its failure would force enemy leadership to reassess their entire strategic position, potentially opening opportunities for negotiated settlement or Allied counteroffensive operations. Elena herself seemed remarkably calm about the magnitude of what she had accomplished. During their final hours of movement toward friendly lines, she displayed the same quiet professionalism that had characterized her behavior throughout the mission. Williams found himself studying her with new understanding, recognizing that Elena had approached this assignment not as a career-defining opportunity, but as routine application of capabilities she had developed through experiences that remained largely mysterious. When Allied patrols finally made contact with Elena and Williams, the reception was unlike anything Williams had experienced in his military career. Word of their mission's success had spread throughout the command structure, creating an atmosphere of excitement and relief that reflected the strategic importance of what Elena had achieved. Officers who had never heard Elena's name 24 hours earlier now spoke about her with the kind of reverence normally reserved for legendary military figures. Elena accepted the attention with characteristic understatement, focusing on mission debriefing responsibilities rather than personal recognition. Her after-action report was precise and comprehensive, detailing technical aspects of the long-range engagement while avoiding speculation about strategic implications that were beyond her direct observation. She answered questions about environmental conditions, ballistic calculations, and tactical procedures, with the clinical objectivity of a professional who viewed extraordinary achievement as normal performance. Williams found himself serving as interpreter for Elena's accomplishment, explaining to amazed listeners the technical difficulty of what she had achieved and the tactical expertise she had displayed throughout their mission. His descriptions of Elena's shooting, navigation, combat skills, and leadership carried the credibility of someone who had witnessed these capabilities firsthand under extreme conditions. As they approached Fob Resolute, Elena and Williams could see evidence of the changed tactical situation their mission had created. Aircraft that had been grounded for defensive operations were now conducting offensive sorties against retreating enemy forces. Artillery that had been positioned to repel assault was being repositioned for pursuit operations. The entire character of military operations in the region had shifted from desperate defense to aggressive exploitation of enemy confusion and disorganization. General Harrison was waiting at the base entrance when Elena and Williams arrived, accompanied by intelligence officers, special operations representatives, and communications personnel who would relay news of the mission's success to higher command authorities. Elena's single shot had not only eliminated a key enemy leader, but had fundamentally altered the strategic balance of an entire war, creating opportunities that military planners were already beginning to exploit. The debriefing room at Fob Resolute buzzed with an energy that Elena had never experienced in her military career. Senior officers who normally dealt with strategic planning now sat around a conference table, hanging on every word as she described the technical details of a shot that had fundamentally altered the trajectory of an entire conflict. Elena provided her account with characteristic precision, outlining environmental factors, ballistic calculations, and engagement procedures, while carefully avoiding any embellishment of her role in the mission's success. General Harrison observed Elena throughout the debriefing with growing fascination. The quiet staff sergeant who had requested deployment to a combat zone now sat calmly explaining how she had eliminated one of the most capable enemy commanders of the modern era. Elena's demeanor remained unchanged despite the magnitude of her achievement. Professional, understated, and focused on technical accuracy rather than personal recognition. Colonel Thompson interrupted Elena's ballistic analysis with a question that had been troubling intelligence analysts since the mission's completion. "Staff Sergeant, your precision at extreme range suggests training that exceeds standard military sniper programs. Can you elaborate on your background in long-range shooting?" Elena paused, considering her response with the careful attention she applied to everything else. "I've had opportunities to develop these skills through various assignments," she replied diplomatically. "Some training programs don't appear in standard personnel records due to operational security requirements." The answer was truthful, but incomplete, leaving her listeners with the clear impression that Elena's background included classified experiences she could not discuss in detail. Captain Chen had been researching Elena's military history since her return, using intelligence databases and personnel records that provided more comprehensive information than standard files. His preliminary findings were disturbing, not because they revealed problematic information, but because they revealed so little. Elena's record contained unusual gaps, assignment descriptions that were vague beyond normal classification requirements, and training certifications that referenced programs Chen could not identify through official channels. The pattern suggested that Elena had participated in operations so sensitive that her involvement had been systematically obscured, possibly through the kind of administrative procedures used to protect personnel involved in highly classified special operations. Chen had encountered similar record anomalies when researching operators from units like Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and other organizations whose activities required extensive compartmentalization. During a break in the formal debriefing, Chen approached Elena privately with questions about her previous assignments. "The databases show training certifications for programs I can't access," he explained. "Advanced long-range reconnaissance, special operations urban warfare, high-altitude infiltration techniques. These aren't standard infantry specializations." Elena studied Chen's face, evaluating how much she could reveal without compromising operational security protocols that might still apply to her previous assignments. "I've worked with specialized units that required additional training," she said carefully. "Some of that experience remains classified even after assignment completion." Chen pressed gently for additional details, recognizing that Elena's background might be crucial for understanding her capabilities and potential for future assignments. "The shooting you demonstrated isn't something that develops through standard military training. That level of precision suggests thousands of hours of practice under expert instruction, probably combined with operational experience at extreme ranges." Elena remained silent for several moments, weighing her response against security obligations and personal privacy considerations. Finally, she provided a carefully measured explanation. "Before joining the regular army, I spent time with units that specialized in precision engagement missions. The training was comprehensive, and the operational tempo provided extensive practical experience. I prefer not to discuss specific details." Quote. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Allied Command Headquarters, summoning General Harrison to an emergency conference call with senior military and political leadership. The strategic implications of Petrov's elimination were reverberating through international diplomatic channels, creating opportunities and challenges that required immediate high-level coordination. Elena used the interruption to step outside the briefing room, seeking a few minutes of solitude after hours of intense questioning. Williams found her there, studying the mountain ridges where their mission had unfolded with the detached analysis of a professional evaluating completed work. He had been observing Elena throughout the debriefing, noting her discomfort with the attention her achievement was generating. "They're going to want to know everything about you," Williams said, settling beside Elena on a concrete barrier that overlooked the base's perimeter. "Your background, your training, how you developed capabilities that exceed most special operations snipers. You realize that, right?" Elena nodded, understanding that her mission's success had created complications she would need to navigate carefully. "Sometimes exceptional performance raises more questions than it answers," she replied. "I've learned that it's often better to let people draw their own conclusions rather than providing explanations they might not understand." Williams had been formulating his own theories about Elena's background, based on observations made during their mission and conversations with other personnel who had encountered operators from classified units. "You're not regular Army," he said with conviction. "Your tactical knowledge, shooting ability, and operational experience suggest training and assignments that don't appear in standard personnel systems." Elena studied Williams with the same careful assessment she applied to tactical situations, evaluating his trustworthiness and his potential to handle sensitive information responsibly. There are programs and units whose existence requires administrative compartmentalization, she said eventually. Personnel involved in certain operations sometimes transition to conventional assignments as part of their career progression or operational security requirements. Quote, the explanation provided Williams with enough information to understand Elena's situation without revealing specific details that might compromise ongoing security protocols. Elena had clearly served with elite units whose activities remained classified, but she was now attempting to function as a conventional soldier, despite possessing capabilities that far exceeded normal expectations. Their conversation was interrupted by the return of General Harrison, whose expression indicated that her conference call had produced significant developments. Staff Sergeant Martinez, Harrison said, I need to speak with you privately. Captain Chen, please coordinate with intelligence personnel to prepare a comprehensive assessment of current tactical opportunities. Elena followed Harrison to her private office, where the general activated electronic countermeasures designed to prevent surveillance of sensitive conversations. Harrison's demeanor suggested that their discussion would involve information requiring the highest levels of security and discretion. I've just finished a conference call with the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and representatives from several allied governments, Harrison began. Your mission's success has created strategic opportunities that extend far beyond this regional conflict. Kozlov Alliance leadership is in complete disarray, and their political supporters are questioning continued involvement in what now appears to be an unwinnable war. Elena listened attentively, understanding that Harrison was providing context for requests or assignments that would follow. The strategic implications of Petrov's elimination were clearly more significant than she had realized, creating possibilities for conflict resolution that had not existed before her shot. Harrison continued her briefing with information that Elena found both flattering and concerning. Your performance has attracted attention from the highest levels of government and military leadership. There are discussions about reassigning you to specialized units that could utilize your capabilities more effectively. These opportunities would represent significant career advancement, but they would also involve commitments and responsibilities that extend far beyond conventional military service. Quote, Elena recognized that Harrison was describing the kind of elite assignments that had characterized her previous career before she had requested transfer to conventional units for personal reasons that remained private. The prospect of returning to special operations represented both professional opportunity and personal challenge, requiring decisions about her future that she was not prepared to make immediately. I appreciate the confidence these offers represent, Elena replied diplomatically. However, I'm committed to completing my current assignment and supporting operations in this theater. My immediate focus remains on contributing to mission success rather than pursuing career advancement. Harrison studied Elena's response, recognizing both professional dedication and personal reluctance that suggested complex motivations. Staff Sergeant, your capabilities are exceptional, and the military has obvious interests in utilizing them effectively. However, I also understand that exceptional performers sometimes have reasons for preferring less demanding assignments. Whatever your decision regarding future opportunities, you have my complete support. The conversation concluded with mutual understanding that Elena's future would involve choices between competing priorities, professional advancement opportunities that recognized her extraordinary capabilities, and personal preferences that had led her to seek assignment with conventional units. For now, Elena's focus remained on immediate responsibilities rather than long-term career planning. As evenings settled over Fob Resolute, Elena found herself reflecting on how dramatically her situation had changed in less than 48 hours. Her single shot had not only eliminated a key enemy leader, but had also revealed capabilities that would reshape her military career in ways she had not anticipated. The quiet anonymity she had sought through conventional assignment was gone, replaced by attention and opportunities that would force her to confront decisions about her future that she had been avoiding for years. 3 months after Elena's shot changed the course of the war, she stood in the Pentagon's most secure briefing room, facing a panel of generals, intelligence directors, and government officials who had requested her presence for what they termed, quote, strategic consultation. The Kozlov Alliance had formally requested ceasefire negotiations following the complete collapse of their military operations, and Elena's role in triggering this transformation had become the subject of classified studies examining the strategic impact of precision special operations. The war that had threatened to ignite global conflict was effectively over, concluded not through massive military campaigns or diplomatic breakthroughs, but through a single bullet fired by a staff sergeant whose true capabilities had been hidden within the conventional military structure. Elena sat quietly as officials discussed the broader implications of her achievement, uncomfortable with the attention, but professionally attentive to the strategic analysis being presented. General Patricia Harrison, now promoted to oversee Special Operations Integration, provided the panel with Elena's complete military history, a document that had required months of investigation to compile accurately. The revelations were stunning, even to officials accustomed to classified operations. Elena had not simply served with elite units. She had been one of the most effective precision operators in modern military history, responsible for missions that had eliminated terrorist leaders, disrupted weapons programs, and prevented attacks that could have killed thousands of civilians. Her transition to conventional assignments had been voluntary, requested after a particularly difficult mission in Syria, where Elena had been forced to take a shot that eliminated a high-value target but also resulted in unintended casualties that haunted her despite the mission's strategic success. She had requested assignment to routine duties as a way of stepping back from the psychological pressures of life-or-death decision-making at the strategic level. Staff Sergeant Martinez's civilian identity before military service was also carefully constructed, Harrison continued, addressing Elena's pre-enlistment background. The competitive shooting achievements mentioned in her file were real, but they represented only a fraction of her capabilities. She had been identified and recruited by Special Operations Talent Scouts while still in high school, undergoing specialized training that began years before her official military service. Elena listened to the recitation of her hidden history with mixed emotions. The life she had built as an unremarkable conventional soldier was being systematically dismantled, replaced by recognition of achievements she had spent years trying to forget. The officials in the room studied her with fascination, recognizing that they were in the presence of someone whose capabilities exceeded those of most legendary military figures. The strategic impact of Elena's shot continued to reverberate across international relations. The Kozlov Alliance's sudden military collapse had created power vacuums that required careful management to prevent regional instability. Diplomatic negotiations were proceeding successfully, with former enemy leadership eager to reach settlements that would allow them to withdraw from an increasingly untenable position. Intelligence assessments indicated that Elena's elimination of General Petrov had prevented what could have been a protracted conflict lasting years and costing hundreds of thousands of lives. The precision of her intervention had achieved strategic objectives that would have required massive conventional military operations with uncertain outcomes. Her single shot had, quite literally, prevented a war that threatened to engulf multiple continents. Colonel David Thompson, now serving as Special Operations Policy Coordinator, addressed Elena directly with a question that had been central to their strategic review. Staff Sergeant, your decision to request conventional assignment represents a significant underutilization of extraordinary capabilities. From a national security perspective, how do we balance individual preferences with strategic requirements for personnel with your specialized skills? Elena considered her response carefully, recognizing that her answer would influence policies affecting other operators who might seek similar transitions. Military service requires balancing individual welfare with mission requirements, she said thoughtfully. However, sustainable performance at extreme levels depends on psychological and emotional factors that are sometimes overlooked in capability assessments. Forced utilization of specialized personnel can result in degraded performance or psychological breakdown that ultimately serves no one's interests. The response demonstrated Elena's understanding of strategic personnel management issues that extended beyond her personal situation. Officials recognized that her insights could inform policies for managing other high-capability operators who experience similar psychological pressures from sustained high-stakes operations. Captain Robert Chen, now promoted to Major and serving as Special Operations Intelligence Coordinator, provided the panel with analysis of Elena's current psychological profile and recommendations for her future utilization. Staff Sergeant Martinez represents a unique case of voluntary capability suppression for psychological self-preservation, he explained. However, her recent mission demonstrates that her skills remain intact despite extended periods of conventional assignment. This suggests possibilities for flexible utilization that could accommodate both individual welfare and strategic requirements. Elena found herself being discussed as a test case for policies that could affect other operators facing similar challenges. Her situation had revealed gaps in military understanding of how to manage personnel whose capabilities exceeded normal parameters, particularly when those individuals sought respite from the constant pressure of life-or-death decision-making. General Harrison concluded the briefing with proposals for Elena's future that reflected careful consideration of both strategic needs and individual welfare. "We're recommending establishment of a new assignment category for personnel with exceptional specialized capabilities," she explained. These positions would involve periodic activation for critical missions, while allowing extended periods of conventional assignment for psychological recovery and personal development. Elena realized that her situation was being used to create precedents for other operators who might benefit from similar flexible arrangements. The military was attempting to learn from her experience, developing policies that could sustain high-capability personnel over longer careers by acknowledging the psychological costs of sustained elite operations. The panel's final recommendation was both surprising and appropriate. Elena would be promoted to warrant officer and assigned to a newly created position that combined training responsibilities with availability for critical precision missions. She would spend most of her time developing advanced marksmanship programs for conventional forces, sharing her knowledge without constant exposure to high-stakes operations. As the briefing concluded, Elena was approached by officials who wanted to understand her personal perspective on the extraordinary events that had transformed her from an anonymous staff sergeant into a strategic asset of national importance. Her responses remained characteristically understated, focusing on technical aspects of her mission rather than its broader implications. The shot itself was a routine application of principles any competent marksman could execute given proper training and equipment, Elena explained to a group of fascinated intelligence analysts. The strategic impact resulted from intelligence work and mission planning rather than exceptional marksmanship. What made the mission significant was targeting the right person at the right moment, not the technical difficulty of the engagement. Elena's humility about her achievement was consistent with her personality, but officials recognized that her assessment significantly understated the technical and tactical challenges she had overcome. The combination of extreme range precision, tactical navigation, combat skills, and psychological resilience she had demonstrated represented capabilities possessed by perhaps a dozen individuals worldwide. 6 months later, Elena stood before a class of advanced military snipers at the newly established Precision Engagement Training Center, sharing techniques and principles that would enhance their capabilities while allowing her to contribute to military effectiveness without constant exposure to strategic-level pressures. Her students studied her with reverence, understanding that they were learning from someone whose single shot had ended a war. Elena's story had become legend within military circles, but she approached her teaching responsibilities with the same quiet professionalism that had characterized her previous service. She focused on developing practical skills rather than discussing her personal achievements, emphasizing fundamentals over dramatic narratives. During evening hours, Elena often climbed to high points around the training facility, studying distant targets through optical equipment and maintaining the precision skills that had defined her career. These private practice sessions served both technical and psychological purposes, allowing her to remain sharp while providing the solitary reflection time she needed to process her experiences. Elena's transformation from hidden asset to recognized expert had taken months to complete, but she had finally found balance between utilizing her exceptional capabilities and maintaining the psychological equilibrium necessary for sustained performance. Her single shot at 3,000 yards had indeed changed the entire war, but perhaps more importantly, it had created opportunities for her to serve effectively while preserving the personal stability that elite operations had gradually eroded. The war was over, its conclusion achieved through precision rather than devastation, strategy rather than attrition. Elena Martinez had fired one bullet that eliminated one man, and in doing so, had saved countless lives, while demonstrating the extraordinary impact that individual excellence could achieve when applied at precisely the right moment. Her legacy would influence military doctrine for generations, proving that sometimes the most decisive battles are won not by armies, but by a single soldier, with the skill and courage to take an impossible shot when everything depends on perfect execution. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.